The alarm bells rang through the Void Hunter command ship like angry metal birds. Commander Thexvar stood 8 feet tall on his crystal legs, watching the screens with his 4 purple eyes. His body looked like living glass, but much harder and sharper. Each movement made small clicking sounds. "Sir, we found a ship from the Death World," said Officer Krental, her snake-like body coiling around her control station. Her green scales reflected the red warning lights. It came from the 3rd planet in the Sol system. Thexvar felt his crystal heart beat faster. Everyone in the galaxy knew about Sol 3. It was a death world where everything tried to kill everything else. The stories said that creatures there lived in poison air, drank acid rain, and fought giant beasts every day. No civilized being had ever returned from that horrible place. "Show me the ship," Thexvar ordered. The main screen showed a small white vessel floating in space. It looked peaceful, almost pretty. But Thexvar knew better. Death World creatures were tricky. They probably hid their weapons inside that innocent shell. "Sir, should we destroy it now?" asked Zekmor, the team's heavy weapons expert. His rock-like skin was gray and thick. Steam came from the cracks between his stone plates when he got excited. "No, we need to learn about these Deathworlders. The Council wants information." Thexvar touched his communication device. "All teams prepare for boarding. Remember, these are the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. They probably eat metal and breathe fire." The Void Hunters were the best soldiers from 6 different worlds. Each one was chosen because they were the strongest and smartest of their kind. They had never failed a mission, but today felt different. Today they were going to meet creatures from the worst planet anyone had ever found. The boarding tube connected to the human ship with a soft thunk. Thexvar went first, his crystal claws ready for battle. Behind him came his team of 5 other aliens. They all carried weapons that could destroy buildings. The door to the human ship opened with a quiet hiss. Thexvar stepped inside, ready to fight for his life. Instead, he found a hallway that smelled like flowers and something warm and sweet. Soft music played from hidden speakers. The walls were painted in calm blue colors. "This must be a trap," whispered Officer Nithara, the team's scout. Her fur was silver, and her cat-like ears twitched nervously. No Deathworld ship should smell this good. They moved deeper into the ship, weapons ready. But instead of finding warrior dens or torture chambers, they found rooms full of plants. Green leaves and colorful flowers grew everywhere under soft lights. The air felt clean and fresh. "Hello there," said a cheerful voice behind them. The entire Void Hunter team spun around, weapons pointed at the source of the voice. They expected to see a giant monster with sharp teeth and claws. Instead, they saw a small human woman walking toward them with a bright smile. She wore a white coat over simple clothes. Her black hair was tied back neatly. In her hands, she carried a tray with small cups that smelled wonderful. "You must be tired from your journey," she said in perfect galactic standard. "I'm Dr. Jiwan. Would you like some tea?" The aliens stared at her. This was a Deathworlder. She looked so soft, so small. Where were her weapons? Where were her battle scars? "Tea?" repeated Thexvar, his translation device making confused beeping sounds. "It's a warm drink, very relaxing." Jiwan set the tray on a nearby table next to some flowering plants. "We also have some kimchi if you're hungry. It's fermented vegetables, very good for health." Officer Krental's scales turned pale green, which meant she was scared. "Sir," she whispered, My scanner says those vegetables have been attacked by millions of tiny creatures. Oh, that's just the bacteria, Ji-won said happily. They make the vegetables taste better and help our stomachs. Zekmor's stone skin started smoking. They eat bacteria? On purpose? Of course. Fermented foods are very popular on Earth. Ji-won picked up one of the small cups. This tea has antioxidants and helps with stress. You all look very tense. Just then, 4 more humans entered the room. A tall young man with kind eyes came first. Ji-won, who are our visitors? He asked. This is Minho, Ji-won said. He's our engineer, and this is Hana, our chemistry specialist. A pretty woman with long hair waved at them. She wore safety glasses pushed up on her head and had small stains on her lab coat from her work. Hi there, Hana said. Are you here about our research? Permit? We filed all the proper papers with the Galactic Council. 2 more humans joined them. I'm Do-hyun, said a young man with a shy smile. And this is Yuna, he added, pointing to a woman with short hair who was looking at the aliens with curious eyes. Wow, you're all so different, Yuna said with excitement. Are you from different planets? This is amazing. We've never met real aliens before. The Void Hunters looked at each other. These Deathworlders were friendly? They weren't attacking. They weren't showing any signs of violence. They were offering food and drinks like civilized beings. We are the Void Hunter Special Forces, Thexvar said carefully. We came to investigate your ship. Oh, how exciting! Ji-won clapped her hands together. We're just doing botanical research. We're studying how plants might grow in different atmospheric conditions. Would you like a tour? Officer Nithera's ears flattened against her head. Botanical research? Plants? Yes. We're trying to help planets that have trouble growing food. Look at this. Minho walked over to a section of plants with purple leaves. These can grow in very low light, perfect for planets far from their sun. The aliens followed the humans through the ship, getting more confused with every step. The humans showed them laboratories full of tiny plants, computers that tracked growing conditions, and rooms where they tested different soils. This is our kitchen, Hana said, opening a door to a room that smelled incredible. Would you like to try some Korean food? Minho makes the best bulgogi. Officer Krental had to sit down. Her snake body coiled into a tight circle. They have a food preparation area. They actually cook their food instead of eating it raw. Is that unusual? Yuna asked with innocent curiosity. Deathworlders are supposed to hunt and eat their prey while it's still alive, whispered Zekmor, his stone skin cracking with stress. Oh, goodness, no, Ji-won laughed. We're vegetarians mostly, though Do-hyun does like fish sometimes. That was when Officer Glixton, their medical expert, fainted. His blue jelly-like body hit the floor with a wet splat. The humans immediately rushed to help him. Is he okay? Hana asked, kneeling beside the unconscious alien. Does he need water? Medicine? The Void Hunters stared in shock. These Deathworlders were trying to help their fallen enemy. This went against everything they knew about how dangerous creatures behaved. We need to return to our ship, Thexvar said weakly. Of course, Ji-won said kindly. But please take some tea with you. And if you need anything, just ask. We're happy to help. As the aliens carried their unconscious teammate back to their ship, they couldn't stop thinking about what they had seen. These humans were nothing like the stories. They were kind, gentle, and peaceful. but somehow that made them even more terrifying. Back on their command ship, the Void Hunters sat in confused silence. Officer Glixton had woken up but still looked shaky. His blue jelly body kept changing colors from stress. "Sir, what do we do?" asked Officer Krental. Her scales were still, pale from shock. "Those Deathworlders? They're not like anything we expected." Commander Thexvar paced back and forth, his crystal feet clicking on the metal floor. "We watch them. We need to understand what they're really planning. No species becomes that peaceful without a reason." "Maybe the peace is the trap," suggested Zekmor. His stone skin had cooled down, but steam still came from small cracks. "Maybe they make enemies feel safe, then attack." "Set up hidden cameras," Thexvar ordered. "Watch everything they do. Record all their behavior. The Council needs to know the truth about these creatures." So the Void Hunters placed tiny spy cameras all over the human ship. The devices were invisible and silent. Soon they could watch the humans' every move from their command center. For the first few hours, the humans did normal things. Jiwan worked with her plants, checking their growth and taking notes. Yuna studied star charts and navigation data. Do-hyun fixed small problems with the ship's systems. But then the aliens noticed something strange. Minho kept walking past Hana's laboratory. He would slow down near her door, look inside, then keep walking. He did this 7 times in 1 hour. "What is he doing?" asked Officer Nithara, her cat ears twitching with confusion. "Is he checking for weaknesses in her defenses?" "Look at his body language," said Glixton, studying the screen. "His heart rate goes up each time he approaches her area. His hands shake slightly. Classic signs of pre-combat stress." The aliens watched more carefully. Minho went to the kitchen and spent 20 minutes making something hot in a cup. Then he walked toward Hana's lab again, carrying the cup like it was a precious weapon. "He's bringing her something," whispered Krental. "Poison, maybe?" But when Minho reached Hana's door, he just stood there. They could see him taking deep breaths. His face looked nervous, almost scared. Finally, he knocked gently. "Come in," Hana called from inside. Minho entered her lab holding the cup carefully. "I brought you coffee," he said quietly. "I noticed you looked tired." Hana looked up from her computer screen and smiled. It was a bright, happy smile that made her whole face light up. "That's so sweet of you, Minho. Thank you." She took the cup and their fingers touched for just a moment. Both humans seemed to freeze. Minho's cheeks turned pink, and Hana looked down shyly. "You remembered I like it with 2 sugars," she said softly. "Of course I remembered," Minho replied, his voice gentle. "I pay attention to what you like." The aliens stared at their screens in shock. This was not combat behavior. This was something else entirely. "What just happened?" asked Zekmor, his stone skin starting to heat up again from confusion. I think he just gave her a gift," said Nithara slowly. "But why? What does he want from her?" They kept watching. Over the next few days, strange things kept happening. Minho would bring Hana coffee every morning. He learned exactly how she liked it, not too hot, with just the right amount of sugar and milk. When she worked late, he would bring her small snacks. But Hana was doing strange things, too. She started leaving little notes in places where Minho would find them. The notes said things like, "Thank you for the coffee," and "Hope you have a good day," with small drawings of flowers. "They're passing secret messages," Glixton announced during one of their meetings. This must be some kind of military code. But our translators say the messages just contain friendly words, Krental pointed out. Nothing about battle plans or weapons. Then they watched Minho do something that made no sense at all. He spent 3 hours in his small room, folding pieces of paper into tiny shapes. His hands moved carefully, creating small flowers, birds, and stars from old research notes. What kind of weapon is that? Wondered Nithara. The next morning, Minho walked to Hana's lab carrying a small box. The aliens leaned forward, sure they were about to see some kind of Deathworld weapon. Minho knocked on Hana's door, looking more nervous than they had ever seen him. "Hi," he said when she opened the door. "I made something for you." Hana took the box with curious eyes. When she opened it, she gasped. Inside were dozens of tiny paper flowers, each one folded perfectly, from different colored papers. "Minho, these are beautiful," she said, her voice full of amazement. "You made all of these?" "I know you love flowers, but we can't have fresh ones in the lab because of contamination," Minho explained quickly. "So I thought paper flowers would be safe. They won't die, and they won't interfere with your experiments." Hana's eyes became shiny, like she might cry, but she was smiling at the same time. "This is the most thoughtful gift anyone has ever given me." She stood on her toes and kissed Minho's cheek. His face turned bright red, and he stood there looking stunned and happy at the same time. You're welcome," he stammered. "I'm glad you like them." On the command ship, 3 Void Hunters had to be given emergency oxygen. Officer Glixton's color changed to bright purple, which meant total system shock. "Did she just attack his face?" asked Zekmore weakly. "But he looked happy about it," Nithara whispered. "Why would a Deathworlder be happy about a face attack?" Commander Thexvar felt his crystal structure vibrating with stress. Nothing about this made sense. These humans were doing things that went against every law of nature he knew. "Keep watching," he ordered, though his voice shook. "There has to be an explanation." As the days passed, the strange behavior got worse. Minho and Hana started spending more time together. They would eat meals side by side, talking and laughing. Sometimes they would work in the same lab, standing close enough to touch. The aliens watched Minho learn everything about Hana. He knew she liked her lab temperature, exactly 22.5 degrees. He knew she hummed when she was happy and bit her lip when she was thinking hard. He knew she was afraid of spiders but loved looking at stars, and Hana was learning about Minho, too. She knew he liked to fix things with his hands. She knew he missed his family back on Earth. She knew he always checked the ship's safety systems twice because he wanted to keep everyone protected. "They're studying each other," Glixton reported during another emergency meeting. "But not like enemies study enemies. It's different, more detailed, more personal." "Personal intelligence gathering," agreed Thexvar, trying to make sense of it. "They must be planning something together." But then Yuna said something that made the aliens' translation systems almost break down. "Minho has been in love with Hana for months," she told Do-hyun as they worked together in the navigation room. "It's so obvious. I think he's finally getting ready to ask her out." "Ask her out where?" Do-hyun asked. "We're in space. There's nowhere to go." Yuna laughed. "Not out like leaving the ship. Out like on a date. You know, romantic time together." The word romantic made the aliens' computers start smoking. Their translation matrices couldn't handle the concept. Warning lights flashed all over the command ship. "What does romantic mean?" Krental asked desperately. Their computer made sad beeping sounds. "Translation error. Concept not found in database. Closest match, territorial mating ritual." "But there's no fighting," Nithara pointed. "Out. No displays of strength, no territory being claimed. Maybe that comes later," Zekmore suggested hopefully. "Maybe first they study each other, then they fight." But deep down, all the aliens were starting to realize that these humans were doing something completely new. Something their warrior minds couldn't understand. Something that was somehow more powerful than any weapon they had ever seen. The situation on the human ship became more confusing every day. The aliens watched their screens with growing panic as Hana began doing strange things back to Minho. It started small. Hana began leaving coffee for Minho in the morning, just like he did for her. But she remembered things about him that made the aliens' heads hurt. She knew he liked his coffee strong and black. She knew he needed extra caffeine when he worked on difficult repairs. They're copying each other's behavior. Officer Glixton reported, his blue jelly body pulsing with nervous energy. This must be some kind of psychological warfare. But then Hana did something that made no sense at all. She spent her evening in the kitchen, making something that filled the entire ship with amazing smells. The aliens watched her mix ingredients, taste the mixture, and adjust it until it was perfect. The next morning, she brought Minho a small container of food. "I made your favorite cookies," she said with a shy smile. "I remember you said your grandmother used to make them for you." Minho's face lit up like someone had turned on a bright light inside him. "You made these? For me?" "I found a recipe in the ship's database and tried to match what you described," Hana explained. "I hope they taste right." Minho took a bite and closed his eyes. For a moment, he looked like he might cry. "They taste exactly like hers. How did you—" "This is incredible, Hana." The aliens watched in horror as these two humans continued their strange competition of kindness. Minho would do something nice for Hana, so she would do something nice for him. But instead of trying to win, they both looked happy when the other person succeeded. "This makes no sense," Commander Thexvar muttered, his crystal body making stressed clicking sounds. "In competition, one wins and one loses, but they both look like they're winning." "Maybe they're both losing," suggested Officer Nithara hopefully. "Maybe this is some kind of mutual destruction ritual." But the humans didn't look like they were being destroyed. They looked happier every day. The aliens' confusion reached new heights when they observed what humans called inside jokes. Minho would say something that sounded normal, but Hana would laugh like it was the funniest thing in the universe. Then Hana would make a comment that only Minho understood, and he would grin widely. "They have a secret language," Krental reported during an emergency meeting. "They communicate using codes that make them both happy." "Codes about what?" asked Zekmore, his stone skin heating up from stress. "We don't know. Our translators can understand the words, but not why they find them amusing." The breaking point came when the aliens observed something they decided to call tactical touching. It started when Hana and Minho were working together in the lab. Hana was reaching for something on a high shelf when Minho stepped behind her to help. "I got it," he said softly, reaching over her to grab the container. For a moment, they were very close together. The aliens held their breath, waiting for the attack. But instead of fighting, both humans seemed to freeze. They looked at each other with strange expressions. "Thank you," Hana whispered. "You're welcome," Minho replied just as quietly. Then, Hana did something that made Officer Glixton faint again. She took Minho's hand in hers and held it gently. She didn't squeeze to cause pain or grab to control him. She just held it. Minho looked down at their joined hands with wonder, like he was seeing something magical. "Your hands are always so warm," Hana said. "Yours are so soft," Minho replied. They stood there for 30 seconds, just holding hands and looking, happy about it. Then Hana let go, and they both went back to work with small smiles on their faces. The aliens' command center erupted in chaos. "What was that?" screamed Nithara, her fur standing on end. "Some kind of nerve warfare," Krental suggested, her scales turning bright yellow with panic. Maybe they were testing each other's pain tolerance, but they looked pleased, Zekmore pointed out. Why would they look pleased about pain testing? Commander Thexvar called an emergency strategy meeting. All 6 alien warriors gathered around their conference table, looking more confused than they had ever been in their military careers. "These humans are using psychological weapons we don't understand," Thexvar announced. "They're doing things that should be impossible." "Sir, what do you mean?" asked Officer Yextha, their communications specialist. His mouth parts clicked nervously. "They're showing weakness to each other on purpose," Thexvar explained. "They tell each other their fears, their mistakes, their embarrassing memories. In any normal species, this information would be used as weapons. But these humans seem to become closer when they share weaknesses." The team sat in stunned silence. "Yesterday I watched the male human tell the female about a time when he cried because he missed his family," Thexvar continued. "Instead of using this information to mock him, she told him about a time when she cried too. Then they both looked comforted." "That's impossible," whispered Glixton. "Showing weakness leads to death. Everyone knows that." "Not for these humans," Thexvar said grimly. "For them, showing weakness seems to make them stronger together." Just then, their spy cameras picked up something new. Dr. Jiwan was talking to Yuna in the ship's common area. "I think Minho is getting ready to ask Hana on a real date," Jiwan said with excitement. "Finally," Yuna replied. "I've been watching. Them dance around each other for months. It's so obvious they like each other." "What should we do to help?" Jiwan asked. The aliens stared at their screens. "Help? Why would they help their fellow humans find mates? This went against every survival instinct known to any species." "I have an idea," Yuna said with a mischievous grin. "What if we tell them both that the observation deck will be empty tonight? You know, for maintenance or something. Then they might end up there at the same time?" "That's perfect!" Jiwan clapped her hands together. "And I can make sure the star projection system is working. It's so romantic to look at stars together." The word romantic made all the alien computers start smoking again. Warning alarms went off all over their ship. "Sir," Yextha said in a shaky voice, "I think I'm beginning to understand what romantic means." "Explain," Thexvar ordered. "It's not about fighting or territory or dominance," Yextha said slowly. "It's about making each other happy. It's about choosing to care for someone else as much as you care for yourself. Maybe more." The silence in the command center was broken only by the sound of Glixton sliding off his chair in a dead faint. "That's the most terrifying thing I've ever heard," Nithara whispered. Back on the human ship, Doyun was having his own realization. He watched Minho practice what he wanted to say to Hana, talking to himself in the mirror. "Hana, would you like to—" "No, that sounds stupid," Minho muttered. "Hana, I was wondering if you might want to Ugh, still stupid. Do-Yun smiled. Then he looked over at Yuna, who was working at her computer. She had been kind to him lately, sharing her food and asking about his research. She laughed at his jokes and seemed to enjoy talking with him. Maybe, Do-Yun thought, he could be brave like Minho. Yuna, he said quietly. She looked up with bright, curious eyes. Yes? Would you like to help me with my star navigation project tomorrow? I could use a second opinion. Yuna's face lit up with happiness. I'd love to. That sounds really interesting. In the alien command center, another officer fainted. The humans were multiplying their romantic behavior. Soon, their ship would be full of humans, showing weakness to each other, caring for each other, and choosing cooperation over competition. It was the most frightening military strategy the Void Hunters had ever encountered. The moment that broke the aliens' minds completely came 3 days later. Minho had been acting strange all morning, pacing around the ship and checking his appearance in every reflective surface. The Void Hunters watched him with growing confusion as he changed his clothes twice and practiced speaking to his reflection. Today is the day, they heard him whisper to himself. Just ask her. The worst she can say is no. No to what? Officer Krental asked desperately. Her scales had been changing colors so rapidly from stress that she looked like a walking rainbow. Commander Thexavar studied the screens with his 4 purple eyes. He's preparing for some kind of major operation. Look at his behavior patterns. Classic pre-mission stress. The aliens watched Minho go to the kitchen and begin preparing something elaborate. He spent 2 hours cooking, filling the air with incredible smells. He made several different dishes, arranging them carefully on plates. Then he decorated everything with small flowers from Jiwon's garden. Poison preparation, suggested Zekmore hopefully. Maybe he's finally going to attack. But then Minho did something that made their theory fall apart. He tasted every dish himself, making sure each one was perfect. Why would he test poison on himself? Next, Minho went to the ship's observation deck. This was a small room with large windows that showed the stars outside. He spent another hour setting up something the aliens had never seen before. He connected his computer to the room's projection system and created what looked like a flowing river of stars across the walls and ceiling. Environmental manipulation, Glixton observed, his blue jelly body pulsing nervously. He's changing the territory to his advantage. Then Minho added music, soft, gentle sounds that seemed to make the artificial stars dance. He adjusted the lighting until everything glowed softly. The whole room looked like a dream made real. Sir, whispered Officer Nithara, her cat ears flat against her head, this doesn't look like a battle preparation. This looks like art. The aliens watched Minho check everything 3 times. He moved a plate slightly to the left, adjusted the star projection, changed the music volume. Everything had to be exactly right. Finally, Minho took a deep breath and went to find Hana. The Void Hunters leaned forward, sure they were about to witness the most sophisticated attack strategy ever created. Their weapons were ready. Their medical team was standing by. This was it. The moment when the Deathworlders would show their true nature. Minho found Hana in her laboratory, working late on her plant research. She looked tired, but focused, her hair tied back and small wrinkles of concentration around her eyes. Hana, Minho said, and his voice shook a little. She looked up and smiled. It was the same bright smile that always made Minho's face turn pink. Hi, Minho. What's up? I, well, I made dinner, Minho said, fidgeting with his hands. I know you've been working hard, and I thought maybe you might be hungry. That's so sweet of you, Hana replied, saving her work on the computer. I am pretty hungry, actually. And I set it up in the observation deck, Minho continued. I thought you might like to see the stars while we eat. If you want to. You don't have to. I mean, if you're too busy, I understand. Minho, Hana interrupted gently, and her smile grew even brighter. Are you asking me on a date? The word date made every alarm on the alien ship start ringing at once. Computer systems overloaded. Warning lights flashed. 3 different officers collapsed. Yes, Minho said, his face turning bright red. I'm asking you on a date. A real date. I've wanted to ask you for so long, but I was scared you might say no, and I didn't want to make things weird between us, but I really like you, Hana. I like you so much it makes my chest hurt sometimes, and I know that sounds stupid. Minho, Hana said again, and now her eyes were shiny like she might cry happy tears. I would love to go on a date with you. Then she did something that completely shattered the alien's understanding of reality. She stood up on her toes and kissed Minho gently on the lips. It was soft and sweet and lasted only a few seconds. When she pulled away, both humans looked stunned and happy and scared all at the same time. I've been hoping you would ask me, Hana whispered. I've liked you for so long, too. In the alien command center, total chaos erupted. Officers were fainting left and right. Computer systems were smoking. Warning alarms screamed like wounded animals. What is happening? Screamed Commander Thexvar, his crystal body vibrating so hard it made musical notes. Sir, I think they just merged faces, Officer Yexthy reported weakly. Their mouths touched, and they both looked happy about it. That's impossible, Krental shrieked. Face contact should cause pain. It should be an attack. But they're both smiling, Nithara pointed out, though her voice was barely a whisper. The aliens watched in horror as Minho and Hana walked together to the observation deck. When Hana saw what Minho had prepared, she gasped and covered her mouth with her hands. Minho, this is beautiful, she breathed, looking around at the artificial stars and carefully arranged food. You did all this for me? I wanted our first date to be special, Minho said shyly. I know we can't go anywhere fancy since we're in space, but I thought maybe I could bring something fancy to you. Hana looked like she might cry again, but in a good way. This is more romantic than any fancy restaurant could ever be. The aliens' minds simply could not process what they were seeing. These 2 humans sat down together and began eating the food Minho had prepared. They talked and laughed. They looked at the artificial stars together. Sometimes their hands would touch across the table, and they would both smile. They're sharing resources, Glixton mumbled from where he lay on the floor. They prepared extra food and they're both eating it. That's cooperation. Voluntary cooperation. It's worse than that, Thexvar said, his voice hollow with shock. Look at their body language. They're completely vulnerable to each other. If either one wanted to attack, the other couldn't defend themselves. But they're choosing to be vulnerable. The breaking point came when Hana laughed at something Minho said. She laughed so hard that she snorted a little, then covered her face with embarrassment. That was not an attractive sound, she said, hiding behind her hands. Instead of being disgusted or disappointed, Minho gently pulled her hands away from her face. I think it's adorable, he said softly. I love your laugh. All of it. Hana looked at him with wonder. Really? Really, Minho confirmed. I love the way you snort when you laugh too hard. I love the way you hum when you're working. I love how you care so much about your plants that you talk to them. I love how kind you are to everyone. I love you, Hana. The words, I love you, caused a complete system failure on the alien ship. Every computer crashed simultaneously. Emergency power kicked in. Half the crew was unconscious on the floor. He just told her all his weaknesses. Thexvar whispered in shock. He told her exactly how to destroy him emotionally. He gave her every piece of information she would need to hurt him. And she's crying, Nithara observed, but they're happy tears. I love you too, Minho, Hana said through her tears. I've loved you for months. I was so scared you didn't feel the same way. Then they held hands across the table and looked into each other's eyes like they were seeing the most beautiful thing in the universe. The remaining conscious aliens sat in stunned silence. They had just witnessed the most psychologically sophisticated warfare strategy ever created. These humans had found a way to make themselves stronger by becoming completely vulnerable to each other. They had turned weakness into power, fear into trust, and competition into cooperation. It was terrifying. It was impossible. And somehow, it worked. Sir, Officer Yexida said in a tiny voice, I don't think we're dealing with ordinary death. Worlders. No, Commander Thexvar agreed, his voice full of awe and terror. We're dealing with something much more dangerous. We're dealing with humans who have weaponized love itself. The next morning brought fresh horror for the Void Hunters. Half their crew was still unconscious from the psychological shock of witnessing human romantic behavior. The other half sat staring at blank walls, trying to process what they had seen. Commander Thexvar hadn't slept at all. His crystal body had developed stress fractures that made tiny musical sounds when he moved. He kept replaying the footage of Minho and Hana's date, trying to understand how two beings could make themselves so completely vulnerable to each other and somehow become stronger. Sir, Officer Krental said weakly, her scales a dull gray. Color. We need to report to the Galactic Council, but what do we tell them? The truth, Thexvar replied, though his voice cracked. We tell them that humans are the most dangerous species we've ever encountered. Because they're violent? Asked Officer Nithara hopefully. No, Thexvar said. Because they're not. Just then, their communication system buzzed. Someone from the human ship was calling them. This is Dr. Jiwan, came the cheerful voice. I hope everyone is feeling well today. We noticed your ship has been nearby for several days, and we wanted to invite you over for breakfast. We're making pancakes. The aliens looked at each other in panic. She knew they were there. She had known all along. Accept the communication, Thexvar ordered, though his hands shook. We need to understand their strategy. Dr. Jiwan's face appeared on their screen, smiling warmly. Behind her, they could see the other humans preparing food and laughing together. Minho and Hana stood close to each other, looking happy and relaxed. Sometimes they would touch each other's hands or shoulders in casual, gentle ways. We know. You've been watching us, Jiwan said kindly. You're not very good at hiding, I'm afraid. But that's okay. We understand you're probably curious about us. Would you like to come aboard and talk? You knew we were spying on you? Thexvar managed to ask. Of course, Jiwan laughed. Your cloaking technology is good, but our sensors are better. We've been aware of your presence since the first day. "Then why didn't you attack us?" blurted Officer Glixton, who had just regained consciousness. Jiwan looked genuinely confused. "Attack you? Why would we do that? You haven't threatened us. You've just been watching. We thought you might be lonely, being out here in space all by yourselves." The word lonely hit the aliens like a physical blow. In all their military training, no one had ever considered that isolation might be a problem to solve rather than a tactical advantage. "We don't understand your species," Thexvar admitted. "You do things that should be impossible. You show weakness to each other, but it makes you stronger. You compete by trying to make each other happy. You voluntarily make yourselves vulnerable. None of this makes sense." "Oh," Jiwan said with understanding. "You've been watching Minho and Hana fall in love. That must be very confusing if you've never seen human courtship before." "Courtship," repeated Thexvar, and his translation device started smoking again. "Explain this concept." "It's how humans find partners," Jiwan explained patiently. "We show each other kindness and attention. We learn about each other's hopes and fears. We try to make each other happy. When two people discover they care deeply for each other, they form a bond." "What kind of bond?" asked Krental suspiciously. "A love bond," Jiwan said simply. "They promise to take care of each other, support each other, and face life's challenges together. They become stronger as a team than they ever were alone." The aliens' computer system started overheating again. Team strength through vulnerability was a concept their databases couldn't handle. "But why?" Nithara asked desperately. "Why would anyone choose to care about another person's welfare as much as their own?" Jiwan smiled sadly, like she was talking to children who couldn't understand something simple. "Because love makes life worth living. Because having someone who truly knows you and accepts you completely is the most precious thing in the universe. Because when you share joy, it becomes bigger, and when you share sorrow, it becomes smaller." She paused, looking at their confused faces on the screen. "Would you like to come see for yourselves?" she offered. "I think understanding might be easier than explaining." An hour later, the Void Hunters found themselves back on the human ship, sitting around a table covered with something called pancakes. The food smelled incredible and tasted even better. The humans had prepared extra portions without being asked, anticipating their guests' different dietary needs. Minho and Hana sat next to each other, and the aliens watched them with fascinated horror. They shared food from each other's plates. They finished each other's sentences. When Hana got a small drop of syrup on her cheek, Minho gently wiped it away with his napkin, and she smiled at him like he had given her a precious gift. "They're completely synchronized," whispered Glixton. "It's like they're operating as a single unit." "But they're still individuals," observed Yextha. "They disagree about things sometimes, but they discuss it calmly until they find a solution they both like." Dohyun and Yuna were showing early signs of the same behavior. They sat closer together than necessary, shared quiet jokes, and seemed to light up when the other person spoke. "It's spreading," Krental whispered in terror. "The romantic behavior is spreading to other humans." "Of course it is," Jiwan said cheerfully, having overheard. "Love is contagious. When people see others being happy together, it reminds them that they want happiness too." After breakfast, Dr. Jiwan gave the aliens a complete tour of the ship. She showed them the research labs, the living quarters, the common areas where the humans relaxed together. Everything was designed for cooperation and shared comfort. "We're explorers," Jiwan explained as they walked. We travel together to dangerous places far from home. We have to trust each other completely. We have to care for each other like family. That's the only way we survive. But humans are from a death world, Thexvar protested. Death worlds create violent, competitive species. That's a universal law. Yes, Earth is dangerous, Jiwon agreed. That's exactly why we learned to work together. The humans who survived were the ones who could cooperate, who could form strong emotional bonds, who could sacrifice for each other. Violence and competition were useful sometimes, but love and cooperation were what kept us alive. The aliens stared at her as the truth finally sank in. Humans hadn't become peaceful despite being from a death world. They had become loving because they were from a death world. Their capacity for deep emotional connection wasn't a weakness. It was their greatest survival tool. We need to report this to the Galactic Council, Thexvar said quietly. Of course, Jiwon replied. But please tell them we come in peace. We want to share what we've learned about cooperation and love. We think other species might benefit from understanding these concepts. As the Void Hunters prepared to leave, they watched Minho and Hana saying goodbye to them. The two humans stood with their arms around each other, radiating contentment and joy. Thank you for visiting, Hana said warmly. It was nice to meet you. Come back any time, Minho added. Our door is always open to friends. The aliens walked back to their ship in stunned silence. Once aboard, Thexvar began composing his report to the Galactic Council. To the honored council, he dictated, "We have encountered the humans of Sol 3. Initial assessment. Humans are not a threat because they are savage. They are a threat because they have weaponized love itself." He paused, trying to find words for something that had no words in any galactic language. They form emotional bonds so powerful that they will voluntarily face any danger for each other. They have turned weakness into strength, fear into trust, and competition into cooperation. They call this romance, but it is the most sophisticated psychological warfare we have ever encountered. Thexvar looked out his window at the human ship, where warm lights glowed in the windows, and he could see the crew sharing their evening meal together. Recommendation: humans should be classified as simultaneously the most dangerous and most essential species in the galaxy. Dangerous because their capacity for love could destabilize our entire understanding of survival strategy. Essential because what they have learned might be the key to ending the loneliness that plagues every spacefaring species. He paused again, then added, "Request immediate backup, not for protection from human aggression, but because witnessing human courtship rituals has left my entire crew psychologically compromised. We are no longer capable of understanding violence as a primary survival strategy." As he finished his report, Thexvar watched through his window as Do-hyun shyly offered Yuna a flower from the ship's garden. She accepted it with a brilliant smile and stood on her toes to kiss his cheek. Do-hyun's face turned red, and he looked like the happiest being in the universe. 3 more of Thexvar's officers fainted. The Galactic Council's response came 12 hours later. Remain in position. Sending xenopsychology team and emergency counselors. Do not, under any circumstances, allow humans to demonstrate their courtship rituals to other species until we understand the full implications. But it was too late. Word was already spreading through subspace communications. Across the galaxy, other species were hearing about humans who had turned love into their greatest weapon. And somewhere deep in space, on a small research vessel full of plants and hope, Minho and Hana held hands.